Oh, there I am. And there's that. Okay. Welcome to Reflections. I'm Chris, your host, and it's Monday of Holy Week. Yeah. So we have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and kind of Thursday of Holy Week, and then Thursday night, we remember the Last Supper and the washing of the feet of the disciples. So, interesting stuff. So today, we're going to look at the gospel reading. It's in the telling of John, and it's actually before the triumphal entry. So yesterday was Palm Sunday. We saw Jesus being ushered into Jerusalem. Today, we sort of take a step back, and this is just prior to. So if you remember, oh, and by the way, I've positioned my microphone in a different spot just to see how it works. I like it because it makes it easier for me to do what? Drink my coffee. Anyway, I may change it back. Who knows? I don't know. Anyhow, so if you remember yesterday, Jesus is heading towards Jerusalem, and he's between two towns. One of them is the town of Bethany by the Mount of Olives. And that's where we see Jesus today, at Bethany. And, I think it's one of my favorite group of people. I think they were very close to Jesus. It's Martha and Mary and Lazarus. They lived in Bethany. They were friends of Jesus. He would stay there often. And I think they were really close. And as I looked at the stories of them all, I think I even know their birth order. Can you believe it? So Martha, she was the one that was always serving. She was always working. And she felt put upon because her sister Mary wasn't helping out. I think Martha was the firstborn. Being a firstborn, I can relate to her. I think Mary was second, and I think Lazarus was the baby of the family, which is why when he died, it was so hard on Mary, for sure. I think one of these days I'm going to write a little essay called The Tale of Two Sisters, Mary and Martha, because they're very different. And I think as the stories, and they're told, the stories about them are told in different places, but it's very consistent to their personalities. I really get the sense that these are real people and this is how they behaved. So let's look at today's reading. But first, let me say welcome to all of you who are here with me live, and thank you to those who are joining via video. Thanks for dropping by and giving a listen. And if ever you want to share your own reflections on some of these gospel readings, feel free. You can do it on my Facebook page as it shows up, or you can post it onto the YouTube as a comment. That'd be great. That'd be wonderful. And if you wanted to go to YouTube, it's the channel is called Reflections with CJ instead of Chris Jensen. It was too long. So anyway, so let's just go ahead and dive into today's reading and see what we've got to see. It's quite an interesting one, actually. It's one of my favorite tellings of this particular story. This story is told in Mark and in Matthew, and one similar to it is told in Luke. Okay, so here we are. It's 6 days before Passover, and Jesus comes to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So this is chapter 12, and it's chapter 11 where we get the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. They gave a dinner for him there, and Martha served. That's her thing, right? So we see, one of the first instances of Jesus staying at the house in Bethany, Martha is serving, Mary sitting at his feet listening to what he has to say, and Martha complains, right? So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, while Lazarus was one of those reclining at table with him. Now, Mary, okay, this person has got a different relationship with Jesus completely. Mary took a liter, and actually I looked it up, and it's a pound. It's actually the word for pound. Took a pound of costly perfumed oil made from genuine aromatic nard, and I guess it's called spikenard now. And it comes from the land of India. It's a leafy plant, very aromatic. And anointed the feet of Jesus and dried them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Another story has her also anointing his head. So you've got both his head and his feet. And those are symbols. They mean stuff. You can look that up. Then Judas the Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who would betray him. Yep, this is the Judas of fame, or infamy, as the case may be. Why was this oil not sold for 300 days' wages and given to the poor? Right? That's a reasonable thought, especially, Jesus is very much about taking care of the poor and the marginalized, the ostracized, right? He had an ulterior motive, though. He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and held the money bag and used to steal the contributions. To me, this is fascinating. This is people just didn't volunteer to be a disciple of Jesus, the 12, one of the 12. Jesus chose them. He chose Judas. And I just find this fascinating because there's not a doubt in my mind that Jesus knew what Judas was up to. At the Last Supper, he knows that Judas is going to betray him. He knows it. I'm sure he knew that Judas was extorting money from the till, so to speak, stealing the contributions for the poor. But he doesn't say anything about that at all. Jesus says, leave her alone. Let her keep this for the day of my burial, which he knows, and we know because we've read the story, it's not far away. Then he says, you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. We may be coming back to that for the reflection. Let's just see. The large crowd of the Jews found out that he was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. Now, if Jesus had been a good capitalist, he would have, sold tickets for people to see Lazarus. But he's not a good capitalist. And now get this. And the chief priests plotted to kill Lazarus too, because many of the Jews were turning away and believing in Jesus because of him. Now, if that's just the most ridiculous reason to kill somebody, envy, jealousy, there's an old saying, though, that says power only gives up its power to an equal or greater power. They don't give it up easily, and the chief priests were used to being in power. They had a lot of power over the people. So, and of course, yesterday we learned that they were concerned for the nation of Israel, that if people were saying he was the king of the Jews, that it would be a direct threat to Caesar and that Rome would retaliate. And of course, we know that in 70 AD, Rome destroyed Jerusalem, just absolutely destroyed it. So by trying to avert being destroyed in this instance, they just postponed it by 70 years. Yeah. So you never know. the thing you may be trying to avoid, and that you may think that you've gotten away with avoiding it, may come back to get you decades later, right? So what's the deal here? Leave her alone. Let her keep this for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. Today, this morning, I met with one of my friends. When I was in high school, we did a cross-country trip, my mom and my sister and I. And we stopped off at my grandfather's place in Minnesota. And he taught me how to play a card game called cribbage. One of my father's favorite games also. And we conspired to not tell Dad that I'd learned how to play. And then I'd get back home and I'd ask him to teach me. And I already knew how to play. And I played fairly well, I guess. So I played him and I just, beat the pants off of him. He was shocked and surprised. And then we laughed and told him, about Grandpa teaching me. His father taught me how to play. And my mom said that she used to play Dad before I was born, and he would just, he'd be the master and she'd be the loser, the learner. And then, but when she was pregnant with me, she would win. And then after I was born, she started losing again. That's her story. I don't know if it's true. Who cares? I don't care. Anyhow, just recently, I've started playing cribbage again after decades. And this morning, my buddy and I, we played cribbage over coffee in the morning and everything. And on my way back, I was reflecting on this story, and the phrase came to me. I remember we used to talk about it at work. The phrase goes something like this, and you've heard it before. It's not original. It's always the right time to do the right thing. And I think here we have a whole issue of timing. We've got the timing of Mary bringing out the oil to anoint the feet of Jesus. It was the right time to do that. Even when he was visiting back in the house and Martha was complaining that Mary was just sitting there listening to Jesus. And Jesus says, I'm not going to be around forever. So she has chosen to do the right thing because I'm not going to be here forever. In a sense, he says the same thing here. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. So while he was there, she anointed him. She worshiped him. She honored him. This was not a cheap thing. This is very expensive. 300 days' wages. That's a lot of money. She did the right thing at the right time. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. This has sometimes been used, I think, in the context of, why do anything? Because the poor is just inevitable. People are going to be poor. It's a non-winning battle. So why try? Because you are always going to have the poor with you. That's not what Jesus is saying here. What he's saying here is to do the right thing at the right time, right? When Jesus is present, you worship Jesus, you honor him, you give to him. But then when he's not around, that's when you minister to the poor. Right? That's what he's saying. Now that he is gone, 2,000 years he's been gone, over 2,000 years he's been gone. We have the poor with us. We always have the poor with us. We always have that opportunity to reach out to the poor, to provide for their needs, comfort, companionship. Maybe it's material needs, food, clothing, housing, medical care. That's on us, right? And when do we have Jesus most prominent? That's when we worship him, right? Jesus is present in many different ways too. You can say that, look at Matthew 23, 25, somewhere in there. Maybe it's 25. Anyway, it's the sheep and the goats, right? Where he says that as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. So in a sense, ministering to the poor is ministering to Jesus. And then the question becomes, is ministering to Jesus also ministering to the poor? Interesting thought. So there's a couple of things to take away from me for today. Have I made provision to minister to the poor in whatever way I can? Have I maybe set aside some change that I can carry with me so that when someone asks me for change, I don't have to say, I'm sorry, I don't have any? Right? Have I neglected to donating when I can? I can't always be the person who, ministers, gives out food or clothing or finds them housing or what have you, medical care. But have I donated to people who can do that? Have I donated not just finances, right? But if I've got extra clothes that I don't wear any longer, or if my kids are grown and, a lot of times we do hand-me-downs, and that's great. But kids are grown and I don't have anything else to do with these clothes, donate them, or what have you. Or someone needs to go to the doctor or get signed up for something, but they've got to go somewhere. Offering to get them there. These are things that we can do. And by doing this, we also are ministering to Jesus. It's our way of breaking open the alabaster jar, which is what's told about in another story, and using the perfume to minister to Jesus. So that's my takeaway for today. And I thank you for being here. Once again, I've got reflections up, blocking the driveway, so to speak. Ding, bye-bye reflections. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like it's always the right time to do the right thing. And we just have to pay attention and do what we can when that moment arrives, right? Yeah. So thank you very much for being here, for listening to me. And feel free to share your own reflections on some of these gospel stories, these gospel readings that we're looking at. Feel free to share how you're spending this week, ahead of Easter, Resurrection Sunday. So until we meet again, which will be tomorrow, I wish you be well, be happy, be safe, and God bless.